Hello, hello. It is your host, Zipsaw, with Zipsaw's Art. Looking at it, all of you, I can't believe it. I had to check this morning and double check. Over 900 subscribers? The love is incredible. Truly appreciate all of you. Not expecting to go that far. I understand that all of you are here to learn, and just to let the community know, I do actually put polls in the community section posts of YouTube on the YouTube channel. So if you want to have your voice and your opinion as far as what videos and what lessons you want to learn, please do make sure that you go into my post section on my YouTube channel and cast your vote for what we want to learn next. But before we get into our lesson, let's go over to the non-sponsored sponsors of today's video. The first thing that I want to introduce, of course, is the hardware that I actually make all of my illustrations and use for all of my art lessons. And that would be with the Huion Canvas 13. The Huion Canvas 13 is an incredibly well-priced piece of machinery. It does everything that you need it to do, nothing that you don't want it to do, has a incredibly fair and wonderfully competitive price point, many accessories to choose from, colors as well, and even warranty services. If you are looking into getting into digital art, Huion might be the place for you to start. Next is the software that I use, which is none other than Clipart Studio. Clipart Studio has a free trial service for you to utilize. You may also purchase outright Clipart Studio to get full access to all of the wonderful things that Clipart Studio can offer, such as an incredibly ever-growing community with free tools and assets and tutorials. Also, be sure to look out for deals that pop up every now and then with Clipart Studio. Now that that's out of the way, let's go ahead and go over the lesson plan. We're going to be learning about making simple 2D shapes into 3D shapes. Why it's important to make 2D shapes into 3D shapes. The law of perspective, making sure that you do not violate the law.
Stop! You violated the law.
Basic shapes to master, applying the law of perspective, a lesson in light, and lastly, a super secret advanced shape lesson perspective extreme. With that said, let us talk about the first part of this lesson, why it's important to be able to take two-dimensional shapes and make them into three-dimensional shapes. Yes, precisely the point. When it comes to 2D, we, as far as cartoonists are concerned, usually only care about the 2-dimension, basically the application of pen to paper and creating simple shapes. We can see this, of course, throughout all of cartoon history, such as these shows right here. And of course, if you're millennial scum like myself, you'll know any and all of these cartoons. And as we can see here, most of these cartoons use very simple shapes and create characters, environments, and backgrounds, and so on and so forth. But when we go into the realm, creating the third dimension, we do so with a couple of ideas in place. One of the most simply to understand and fundamental reasons for why we create three-dimensional shapes is strictly just for building purposes. Think about Legos. We take a three-dimensional brick and we put it upon another one, and until we can create a complex three-dimensional figure. Of course, as we get to more quality and more complexity, especially when we look into the world of video game design, when we use three-dimensional shapes in that aptitude, we can see where we can create whatever we want. So, if we want to get more detailed with our artwork, our character designs, scenery, objects, and more, creating 3D shapes are absolutely necessary. So let's get started. First, let's open Clipart Studio. When we open up Clipart Studio, we will see here on the left-hand side, the draw icon. Go ahead and click draw. This will bring up a brand new window and will ask you to create a new canvas. As far as the canvas that we're going to be using today, we're going to make sure we're going to use the postcard, which is a 34 by 2300, and we'll go ahead and situate it into the vertical orientation. So these two arrows here, make sure to click that. As far as everything else, resolution 600, essentially from there, just hit OK. The tools that we're going to be utilizing to create our perspective line, the first thing that we're going to do is select the straight line tool. Then we're going to go to the brush size at the bottom here and boost it up to a nice line size 5. We don't have to worry about opacity. Anti-assailing, make sure we're on medium. Brush shape does not matter, vector, and nothing else of that nature matters for what we're going to do. We need to essentially create a horizon. The first thing we're going to do is hold Shift on our keyboard, followed by dragging the line across the page as you see here. Anytime we hold Shift on the keyboard and we utilize a line tool, the line will snap in 45-degree angles. Now that we have our horizon, the next thing that we're going to be doing is adding a vanishing point. The vanishing point can actually lay on any part of this horizon line. However, try, as far as this lesson is concerned, put it as close to the middle of this line as possible. So we're going to take either a pencil tool or a pen tool. I'm going to take a pencil tool. Doesn't matter the brush size, brush density, or anything like that. Just simply go to your canvas and on the line, put a nice little dot somewhere. And what that basically represents is your vanishing point. Vanishing points are one of the laws of perspective, meaning that the closer and closer you get to that vanishing point on your paper, the smaller and smaller the objects will be until they vanish. Why is it important to have a vanishing point? It's pretty simple. We want to, again, address the fact that when stuff starts to go towards the vanishing point at the middle of our paperwork, that these objects get much smaller. But how do we figure that out? Well, it's quite easy. We start to draw our perspective grid. And to do that, please follow along so you know exactly how to make a perspective grid. First, you're going to make sure that you select your line tool. It is okay to keep the same size line. That's perfectly fine. Now, we are going to give ourselves the field of view. And what is that more specifically? The field of view is essentially where exactly are you looking at the objects, looking at the ground. And the closer, as an example here, the closer you make a line towards the vanishing point, the more flatter to the ground your vision is. And up until a point where once you go this close, essentially whatever is sitting in between these two lines, you're essentially looking at the shoe on the ground from this perspective. However, if we draw a line all the way down here, then essentially what we're doing is taking more of a bird's eye view into and around our perspectives. You can choose anywhere to put this extra line. However, I would suggest giving yourself a little bit of a sizable gap, and that will allow you to really see how this grid formation unfolds. So, once again, we are going to hold Shift and drag the line across our piece of paper. From there, now it's going to be a fairly interesting thing, which is we now need to make the grid. Yes, the grid.
That's right, man. I got in.
What we typically do, and as far as this is my own personal opinion and how I conduct myself with my perspectives, I will start to make angled lines. We need to start at our vanishing point dot. And from that dot, we're simply going to drag a line at a small angle toward the other straight line across your canvas. We will continue to make these kind of lines all the way across our entire canvas. Let's work on the other side now, which would be doing the same thing, adding another line and putting it onto the other line at an angle. So as you can already see, even with this simple perspective, essentially we have a road, and it looks like we're going to a tunnel way off into the distance. Even with this simple perspective here, you could, in some respect, start making art. But let's get more details. So again, go back to your vanishing point. Click and drag and go down and try to be, you're gonna have to eyeball this, try to keep the same width at the very end of your line. It does not have to be perfect, it just has to be close. Then we're going to do the same for the other side. Go back to that vanishing point, drag the line and eyeball it, and look to see if all of the distances are approximately equal as you get down to that other line, and simply release. Continue to do this process until essentially you're running your lines off of the canvas. And right about here somewhere. Again, these just have to be a representation. They do not have to be exact. They do not have to have the same distances. It just has to be close. I said follow along as best as possible. This takes practice. Just like everything else, it takes practice. I'm going nice and slow so people can see the process unfold. As you see, so long as you stick to the law of perspective and continue to draw these lines starting from your vanishing point until it leaves the canvas in an equal sense, we essentially have what seems to be like a field of crops, maybe. So this is the start. Now what we need to do is create the grid. So we have our columns, now we need our rows. So essentially to make rows, we're just going to be drawing straight lines right across the paper. How this will work though is your largest squares are going to be in the front, and then as again the law of perspective dictates, the further and further and closer we get to the vanishing point, these straight lines are going to start coming closer and closer and closer together. So let's go ahead and start that process. Pick anywhere that seems to you that makes sense off the side of your canvas. I usually start off the side here, holding shift and then drawing a straight line all the way across. There we go. So that right there is essentially the largest your squares will ever be. I'm probably going to go ahead and make them a little larger. There we go. Now, from there, again, using your eyeball, this is all a matter of your own perspectives and really diving in deep into your own details of how you see these lines eventually fading off into the distance. And so long as there is a recession of large to small, we can make this work. So again, I'm going to eyeball it and I'm going to say, well, right about here, it's maybe a little smaller. It doesn't look that much smaller, so we're going to try that again. Okay, that looks pretty good. Then we're going to do it again. Looks a little too rectangular. We need to draw that back just a little bit. There we go. That's better. And then again, it's a little rectangular, so we're going to go back down just a smidge. That's good. That's all right. And as you notice, we start to see an actual plane of existence. That's pretty trippy, huh? Isn't that cool? That's something, isn't it? And so we've essentially drawn a floor. If you need to pause the video in order to construct something like this, by all means do so. I want you to be able to get that practice in, because drawing a perspective is going to be incredibly important when we are learning from going from basic shapes to three-dimensional shapes. And so essentially now you have seen the law of perspective in its true form, in a grid pattern from which we have a vanishing point, a horizon, a field of view, and then a grid that matches and acts with the law of perspective by going from large, as things are closer to you, to small, the things that go further from you. Now, we're going to hang on to this perspective, of course, with our layer that you see down here for layer 1. But we don't want to get too distracted, so let's go ahead and blink that off. Click the eye icon next to layer 1, so that way our perspective is out of the way for right now. The next thing that we're going to be learning is the basic shapes that you should be mastering. Let's go back to the left side of Clip Art Studio with the icons that you can see me mousing over with my cursor. Go back to the figure icon, and the first thing that we're going to select is the ellipse. Go ahead and click on the ellipse, and in the settings, go ahead and make the brush size a size 5. Opacity should be at 100. Anti-aliasing should be at medium. Brush shape and everything else does not matter at this point in time. Luckily for digital artists out there, making a circle is going to be very easy for us. For you traditional artists out there, possibly use a protractor or a stencil tool to be able to accomplish a perfect circle if you need that kind of help. Maybe you're an awesome artist and you can draw perfect circles, and by all means, I'd like to see that happen. That's pretty cool. But for us digital artists with Clip Art Studio, it's the same concept as with the Lineart tool. We hold Shift on our keyboard, and for this, I'm actually going to use my mouse and not my pen, and we're going to click and drag, and essentially we have our circle. Fantastic. Now let's go back over to the figure icon, and we're going to pick the rectangle next. Make sure it is a brush size 5, opacity 100, and a scaling at medium. The same concept applies. Click Shift, and then hold and drag, and we'll have a perfect square. Or a rectangle if I release Shift too quickly. Let's draw that one last time. Hold Shift, click and drag, release, and lift your finger off Shift. And then now, we have a perfect square. But what about triangle? Now, with Clip Art Studio, a triangle does not actually appear naturally in the figure lineup. However, you can download additional tools from the Clip Art Studio community site, of which I would suggest exploring at your leisure. But to make a triangle, we have a couple of options, but the best one to use for beginner artists that just want to get the right angles for our triangle is using the polyline. And so for those of you that are wanting to make the best triangle that you can, let us get the polyline figure tool configured. So make sure that we're back onto our figure section, click polyline, and then for the settings, make sure that we have the create line for line and fill. We do not need to worry about clothesline. Brush size, let's go to 5. Opacity 100, and aliasing at medium. And as far as that's concerned, we can start to make our triangle. We can make any triangle we want really, but I'm going to try and make an equilateral. And if you don't know what an equilateral is, that essentially means that every angle within the triangle is the same. I'm going to hold my Shift key down and drag that line at a 45-degree angle because I have no choice. That's what it does for me. So I'm going to hold it right there, and right about there looks good. Then I'm going to release on the mouse button, click the mouse button again, and as you see, a secondary square popped up at the bottom of the line. Now I'm going to, again, continue to hold Shift and work at a straight line across. Use your eyeball, that's perfectly fine. Somewhere probably right about here. Release the mouse, click the mouse, see another square, and work your way up to the box at the top. Release the mouse, click the mouse, and now you have yourself a triangle. And as far as that's concerned, that is the most basic shapes, but let's add a few others. The last shape, of course, is the polygon shape. Same as before, everyone. Click on the polygon. We can choose ellipse, rectangle. There's actually a few options here, but make sure that you are on the polygon selection for the figure. Then scroll down to line fill. Make sure we're on create line. And then as far as everything else, don't worry about it. So long as the marks are exactly as you see here. Brush size up to 5 and opacity 100 and aliasing at medium. Now we're going to do the same thing as before. Hit the Shift key and drag until you're satisfied. And as far as this is concerned, if you do not click your mouse again, you can actually rotate this, and I'm going to make it look just like that. There we go. You can make it whatever you want. It does not have to be in that orientation. These are 4 basic shapes that I believe every artist should be able to draw. Luckily for us digital artists, it's incredibly easy to do. And for our traditional artists at home, well, I hope you gave it your best shot. Using rulers and protractors most certainly will assist in this. Now that we got our basic shapes, how do we apply these shapes into the law of perspective? Okay, so the first thing that I want to do is I'm going to take, using a lasso tool, which of course the lasso tool is one of the best tools ever for digital artists. We're going to take that lasso tool, so go up to the top here, you'll see a selection tool. It might look like a square for you, for most people that are just now starting with Clip Art Studio. Go down to lasso, and I'm going to take each one, I'm going to circle with the lasso tool. See how I did that? Just go ahead, it's like you're drawing. Circle with the lasso tool. I'm going to hit this scale and rotate key and move these shapes out of the way. Make sure hit OK and then deselect. And watch this one more time. So draw around the shape, hit your scale and rotate button, move the shape where you want it, make sure to hit OK, and then deselect all the way to the left. You're going to do this for every single shape just to move it out of the way. There we go. That's good stuff right there, just to move it out of the way. Let's bring our perspective back. Go down to layer number 1, hit the eyeball, and now we have our perspective and we have our shapes. So, how does this work? How do we apply the law of perspective to these shapes? So the first thing I want to do is I'm going to take the square, because the square is the easiest one. We have a square grid and we have a square shape. Now, before we begin though, I want it to make it much easier for myself and yourself to be able to discern the shapes from each other. So we're going to learn a little bit of an advanced lesson, so get ready. Go to layer 1, make sure that you are layer 1 and the pen icon is next to it, meaning that you are drawing on that layer. There is a slider at the top here that I am circling. You'll see 100 and then this what seems to be a little checkerboard. Take that slider and start moving it to the left, and as you see, our perspective is disappearing. We don't want to go too far. I think 40%, so make it go to the number 40. You don't have to necessarily be exactly 40, but let's just go to 40. And what that allows us to do is basically see the perspective line as a transparent figure. And so when we circle, going back to layer 2, make sure you select layer 2 and get to your lasso tool, and we're going to select the square. Be sure not to grab any of your other shapes, by the way. When we go back to the square, first and foremost, I want you to go ahead and go to Edit, Copy, Edit, Paste. Now what you'll see is a layer 2 copy, right? Well, what you basically have just done is you duplicated the square. Congratulations, you just made another shape. Out of thin air. Now, with this shape selected, I want to move it to the perspective. And I'm going to set this shape right on top of the perspective line. Now, the interesting thing here is when I put a shape on the grid, I have dictated that this shape and as this size is the biggest this shape will ever be. Well, maybe I want the shape to be a little bigger. So let's make it a little bigger. Grab that corner box and simply drag until your square gets a little bigger. Well, that's fun. And I'm going to move it back down and on top of, I'm going to try and match up with this corner. You see that corner right there? I'm going to match up with that corner as best as possible. And that's essentially it. But we're going to actually make it a little bigger. until we cover essentially 2 grid squares. So essentially, this square is pretty big. Pretty big. So I have deduced and have directed that this is how big a square will forever be on my perspective line. If we create any more squares on this perspective line, then I shall make them the same size. Again, please do, as a disclaimer, understand that we are just trying to get the simplicities down. Obviously, when we're working with like buildings and other things, you'll have variances in sizes. So long as you keep to the law of perspective, it will all make sense. I'm going to hit OK, and I'm going to deselect. Now I'm going to go back to layer 2, right, that has the original square. I'm going to circle that square again and do the same thing as before. Edit, copy, edit, paste, and now we have a layer 2 copy to. So now we have another square. If one of my squares, my largest square, takes up 2 grid lines, right, from the front, let's go to the next perspective behind that. So if we want to do the same thing again, we'll make our square larger, bring it down, and we will cover 2 grid lines on the next line going back. And as we see, that square is clearly much smaller than the square in front. You would essentially continue this process all the way going back until essentially you would have no more squares left because you've reached the vanishing point. So long as you stick with this grid pattern, you are able to actually give people an idea that the front square is the largest and anything going towards the vanishing point is still the same size as the square in the front, but it's getting smaller because you've applied the law of perspective. So hopefully you now have a grasp of making simple shapes. You're going to be putting those shapes on your grid line. So let's go ahead and do that for the rest of our squares, where we will continue to copy and paste from layer 2 all of the squares and put them on our grid line. You may pause the video at this point in time to conduct that for yourself or follow along. Go ahead and go to layer 2, select our square with the lasso tool, edit, copy, edit, paste. Now we have another copy, and then we're going to make sure that we are on, we don't have to adjust it too much here. It's almost the same size. There we go. Put that right about there. Good stuff. Now we have a layer 2 copy 3. Go back to layer 2 again. Same as before. Lasso tool. Select that square. Edit. Copy. Edit. Paste. And we're going to move this one back onto that same. We might have to zoom in. So remember how to zoom in on your canvas. There is a plus and minus up at the top over here. Just go ahead and hit that plus. And now you have plenty of more visual space. There we go. Now, granted, I'm going to let you all know right now, you could also just simply keep hitting edit, paste, and you will continue to make duplicates, and you will not have to keep going over with the lasso tool. I might have done a little trick on you. I just wanted you to get used to your lasso tool and be able to circle your objects. So if you no longer wish to continue to draw over the square multiple times and hit copy and paste, just go ahead and go to the top, go to edit, paste, because you will continue to make squares for the foreseeable future. All right. I'm going to go ahead and zoom in. Maybe a little too far. There we go. Zoom in. Down we go, down we go. There, I'm just putting these right in line. Right in line. And we're going to edit, paste, because now we'll make another square. Circle that duplicate square and just bring it right down. Bring it right down. There we go. There we go. That right there, there. Look at that. We're making a square tunnel. Pretty cool. I wonder what we're going to do with this little guy over here. We'll figure that out. Might do something fun with him. Edit, paste, circle, drag, zoom, Resize. Make it smaller. Make it smaller. We're going so small. We're going so small. We're going towards the vanishing point. We're obeying the law. The law of perspective. This is our plane of existence. This is our law of perspective. There you go. Fantastic. Edit. We'll do one more. Paste. Just one more for good measure. And then zoom in. Make small. Zoom in. We're really getting small now. Oh boy. Small. Smaller. Smaller. There we go. Right about there. Okay. So we have ourselves quite the interesting little square tunnel system going on here, it seems like. But the thing about this is well, how are we making a 3D shape out of all this? I thought we were supposed to be making like cubes and maybe triangle things and stuff like, and spheres too, because we have a circle, right? Ah, very astute of you. So let's do that now. What we're going to do is go back to layer 2. We created a lot of copies, by the way, so many copies, but that's okay. We're going to go back to layer 2 copy. That's our first square right here. Make sure you can blink it on and off. It's a lot helpful, especially when we get a lot of layers like this. It's very helpful to go ahead and hit that eyeball icon and make sure you're wanting to use the square that you want to use here. So now we're going to, you guessed it, use our lasso and circle that square. We're going to scale and rotate. We're going to use our arrows on our keyboard and lift the square. Lift it, lift it, lift it, lift it, lift it, all up into the air. Just like this, just like you don't care, into the air. Okay. Now let's go ahead and get rid of the basic shapes real quick. There we go. Blinking off the eyeball on layer 2. Now, let's go, let's see, I guess we can go to layer 2, copy 2, which would be right underneath it. And let's go ahead and boost this up into the air as well. Yes, 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 yes. There we go. That's pretty cool, pretty cool. Let's go ahead and leave it a little lower. I think that would be nice. Leave that a little lower, just like that, and hit OK. And then as far as, let's see here, copy 3. Okay, yep, copy 3. They're going to be pretty much going in order now. So copy 3, we're going to select that. And we're going to go way, way up in the air. Oh yes, very far up in the air. Here we go, here we go. Again, I'm using the arrow tool so that way I do not lose. I'm not manually dragging this. As you see, I don't have my hand is right here, but I'm pressing the arrow key up, just the upward arrow key, and we're just going to go straight up into the air until we clear that other cube. Okay, there we go. Then we go to number 4, layer 2, copy 4, circle. And then as far as this is concerned, we're going to stay on the same plane of existence here. La-di-dee, la-di-doo, la-di-da. And right about there, we're going to leave a little bit of space underneath that other square. Perfectly fine. And as far as the rest of them, we're going to leave them just there exactly the way that is. And because this is going to be a fairly simple lesson from here on. Let's make a 3D shape, right? First things first. We want to go to the top and select layer 2 copy, verifying that that is the front square, correct? All right. We are going to create a new layer. So there's a new layer icon right here, a little square with a plus on it. Hit that. Now we have layer 3. Layer 3 is going to be our line tool. We're not going to be manually drawing anything. When it comes to making a, I guess you could say, quote unquote, perfect 3D shape, we don't want to have any deviances in the lines. We want to have perfect lines as best as possible. So make sure to go over to your figure icon over here to the left. Click on that. Scroll up if you need to go to your straight line tool. And the settings should be exactly the same as when we started the lesson. Here we go, making our first 3D dimensional shapes. So how do you make the 3D shape? How does this work? Well, with squares and with anything that has corners, so triangles, trapezoids, polygons in general, and so on and so forth, we essentially grab the corner and we poke that corner with our pen. We drag the line over to the same corner, the same exact corner on the other square that we want to connect to. Let's do that again. So we grab the right top corner of our front square and drag the line to the right top corner of the secondary smaller square. I might have to zoom in just a little bit. Try and get it as best as possible. Even if you have a little bit of overage of line, that's okay. There we go. By all means, doesn't have to be incredibly perfect, but I'm a perfectionist, so I just want to try and get it as close as possible. I'm satisfied with that. You're going to do the same process for everything else. So bottom right corner to bottom right corner. Take the most direct path to do so. You do not want to deviate from this path whatsoever. Bottom left corner to bottom left corner. And then top left corner to top left corner. And as we zoom out here, we can see that we've made ourselves a box. Congratulations! You have made a box. Now, here's the interesting thing. And why we put these lines on a whole separate layer. You might think, conspiracy! Why are we making separate layers? Oh, well, the reason being is because we're obeying the law of perspective. When we look at this box, we have two choices. We either can pretend that this box is made of glass, and so therefore the lines can stay right where they are, or we can make sure that this object is solid. And to make an object solid, we must be able to erase some of the lines that we see. Now, when we think about, okay, we've decided this needs to be a solid object. How do we go about making this glass box into a solid object? So long as we are obeying the law of perspective, it's very quite simple. Obviously, this is lifted into the air a little bit. It's going backwards, and at the angle that we have here, taking our eraser tool, so go ahead and select the eraser tool. Make sure you're on a hard eraser. Everything should be just fine. We don't have to worry about any settings. And, well, this line wouldn't be visible because, well, that's behind this object, right? That front of that square, it's behind the object. But these other three lines we would actually see. So now we actually have to focus on the small square in the back. So make sure to go to Layer 2, Copy to, blink it on and off to make sure that we are altering the square. And, well, if it's a solid box, clearly nothing that's behind the first square should be visible. It's behind it. And as far as these two lines are concerned, I'm going to use a red pencil here. This line here and this line here has created a face of our box. And so what we do from this point is, well, anything that is inside the face of this box, other than the outside line of the most furthest away square, must be erased. So this line here would be erased. Now be very careful, of course, don't be afraid to zoom in and erase up to the line as best as possible. Doesn't have to be perfect, this is just a lesson, we don't need to go for perfection. Then the same principle applies to the bottom of our box. Well, unless the box has an opening in it, which I guess, we could put something on top of it, but that's not the case here. This is a solid object. So we will actually be erasing this line as well. Again, don't be afraid to get in there and erase up to the other lines. And so, if I can zoom out appropriately, so now we have ourselves a solid box. But wait, Zipsaw, what about all the stuff that we still see that's kind of interacting with this box? Yes, understand. Let's go ahead and take care of that now. At any point in time, when we go back down, scroll down on your layer section here to layer 1, we can blink off layer 1 and our perspective disappears. So we don't have to erase anything for our perspective lines. We don't really want to do that anyways because we don't want to get rid of the perspective that we've drawn. So it's just easier to go ahead and just blink that eyeball on and off. Just blink it off so that way you don't have to look at it or pay attention to it. And since you're not deleting it, you can always come back, blink it on, and continue to create even more shapes off of your perspective lines. Good hint, right? Now we have the other squares, right? The other squares are in the way. From the bottom up, so we have layer 2, copy 5. It might be a little different for you, but just use the blink method. Blink off each of these squares until no more are visible. And essentially, again, you have your box. Now, this does still seem a little strange, and I can understand that completely. However, we will talk about another theory before too long. But let's work on this other box that we see hanging up and looming above our first box. So, scroll back up on your layers and verify the 2 squares with the blinking eye method to make sure that you're altering both of these squares. Good stuff. Alright, so we know that it is copy 3 and copy 4. Go to layer 3, however, because now we got to make our lines, right? And so to make our lines, we go back over to the figure tool, click the figure icon, make sure you're on a straight line. I got to go back to black because I used that red color to show you what I was talking about. So now, same thing. Bottom left to bottom left, bottom right to bottom right, and top left to top left, top right to top right. I think for a lot of you, this is a lot more cube-like that you're kind of expecting. What do we do from here, class? That's right, you got it. We just have to erase everything that is inside of the largest square. So with layer 3 already selected, let's go ahead and start erasing these lines. Now you can say, oh, Zipsaw, why did you even bother drawing these lines if you're just going to go ahead and erase them? Well, it's because you still need to learn how it works, how you make a box, how you connect the lines from each corner, and subsequently all other shapes will follow the same suit. You will always want to make sure that you apply your fundamentals in every way, shape, or form. Never forget how to draw what you need to draw, and that even if you do skip these steps, you will be able to know that, oh, well, this is how you would generally make these shapes. And now we need to verify. So remember copy 3, and we have copy 4. Okay, copy 4 is right there. And essentially, we're just going to have to erase most of the square. Oh boy, all of it gone. Gone, gone, gone. And as we see here, obviously, and I'm going to probably draw that line a little better. Let's just draw that line a little better. I'm going to skip that right there and just draw that a little better there. Start with the bottom this and then go over here like that. That's a little bit more satisfactory. Okay, and then we go back to 4, and of course this is a solid object, so we gotta erase these lines here. There we go, and right there. Fantastic. And so now we got another box, and as you can see here, the boxes are actually turned in different directions. You got one that's kind of more like it's actually just hovering up there on a fairly flat plane of existence, and we have this other box, more rectangular, but is tilted off to the side. But they were both formed on the same perspective line. So we know how to make basic shapes. We now know how to apply the law of perspective to our shapes. and then how to connect the shapes together to make a three-dimensional shape. However, in saying this, it still looks kind of plain and we don't really know exactly what's going on here. And so as a little advanced lesson, essentially what we're going to be doing from this point forward is applying the lesson of light, a brief lesson of light. Now, before we continue on, I really want to essentially clean up these layers a little bit. So we're clearly not using any of these smaller squares at this point in time that we've created. So any of the copies that you see that are blinked off, go ahead and select whatever one, doesn't matter, and then click inside these small squares here until you run out of any eyeballs that are not showing. Right click on any of the selected layers and go to delete layer. So those layers are now gone. Now what I want to do is to merge all of these together. So let's go ahead and select any of them, doesn't matter. Probably just select layer 3, that way it's a little bit easier to understand. So layer 3, select layer 2 copy, copy 2, copy 3, copy 4, and merge the selected layer. So right click on any of them, merge selected layer. So now both of our squares are on the same layer. Our simple shapes are on this layer and their perspective is on this layer. Cool stuff. Make things simple. Don't want to make it too complex. All right, the law of light. And again, this is going to be a very basic lesson, so do just take this with a grain of salt, but we're just going to try and give that three-dimensional feel to these shapes in the most basic way possible. When we think about light sources, we have to pick a direction from which the light is coming from. Maybe the light is coming from here. Maybe the light's coming from below, above, side, so on and so forth. Just make sure that you decide on a light source. And as far as for this lesson, we are going to decide on a light source that is essentially a light source that is coming straight from the side. Okay, so we have to pretend that we're shining a flashlight onto the side of these boxes. Okay, well, how would that look like if we're going to use the light theory in this way, in the most basic form? This side, which we do not see, by the way, of this box will be completely lit. This side of this box will be completely lit. So essentially, this side of this box here, we will not color anything. Obviously, there's nothing to color with this box over here, so don't have to worry about it. Because the light is coming directly from the side, this box here may receive what is called a little bit of rim light, where some light does find itself on this side of the box, and underneath the box, there will be hardly any light. The same concept for here, there might be a little bit of rim light because the light is coming from this direction. And then underneath this box, this top box here, there's not going to be any color at all. So let's get rid of all these little marks here and apply that knowledge so that way you can see it in real time. So when we color anything, just remember that your line art must always be above whatever you're coloring as far as on the coloring layer. Let's put this into practice. So when we blink on and off layer 3, we're going to select layer 2. Layer 4 is actually going to be underneath layer 3. When we take a color using our fill tool, essentially we will not be putting anything outside of the lines. Good stuff, good stuff. So let's grab a light gray, I'd say 50-50, a 50-50 gray color. Let's go ahead and hit that and hit that. Then let's take a darker gray color, really dark, not black, but really dark gray color, and do that and that. Already, just with the simplicity here, we can see the 3 dimensions unfolding. I did talk about that rim light, correct? So we can take an eraser tool, and instead of a hard eraser, we can go to a soft eraser. And what a soft eraser does is gently starts to take away the color from your art piece. As far as brush size is concerned, I'm going to use my slider, and luckily I get to see the big circle. That's how big my brush is, by the way, or it gets a little smaller. I'm going to take something about this size. So I guess for my canvas and the canvas that we created together, about 270 is about fine. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start at the bottom, you see, or about halfway on my circle, right? Start at the bottom of that corner, and I'm going to click and hold, and I'm going to work my way up. And then I'm going to work my way back down. Just once. And the same concept here. Might make the brush size a little smaller. That works. Cut that circle in half with the line. Click and hold. Drag down. And then go back up. So now we have essentially rim light. Light that is gone a little bit onto the sides that are going to be shaded a little bit and creates just a little extra depth. Now there is of course much more that we can do here, such as creating gradients. Are you ready for gradients? Do you think you're ready for gradients? All right, let's do a gradient. So with this layer 4, we have it selected, correct? Go up to this grid with a padlock on it. It says lock transparent pixels. Interesting, but what we are actually doing is locking the layer so that way we can't draw outside of what we have colored. Okay, see how I'm marking right now on my page, but nothing's popping up. But if I move over to the squares, I can draw on the squares because I'm allowed to do so. Hopefully you understand that. So make sure you lock your layer with the lock transparent pixels. Now let's make the gradient. Take the airbrush tool that's over to the left, click on it, make sure you have soft selected. Brush size wise, well, let's take a look here. For this bigger square, we're going to need a bigger brush, so let's make a fairly large brush. That works pretty good. I know it's big. I know it's a big brush, but definitely necessary for what we're about to do because we want to be as smooth with our gradients as possible. So I have a 730 size brush. Hardness is at the lowest it can be. Let me move myself real quick. So you see the settings on the left here. Make sure you're at 730. Hardness at the first bar. Brush density is 25. If you don't have 25, take it to 25. Stabilization is okay. We can have it at 50. If you have a stabilization of 50, that's fine. And then all we're going to do is start in this right corner here because the light is straight on, remember. The light is straight on. So we're going to make sure we're not touching this square up here at all. We don't want to do that. And so we're just going to try and not touch that square. Click, hold, and drag. And go up and down. Just one time. Up and down one time. Now let's go to the little square. Brush size a little smaller. 225. 225 looks pretty good. So go to 225 brush size. Everything else remains the same. And the same concept applies. Down. Up. And there you go. This is very basic stuff. But as you see, we've kind of created a 3-dimension to these objects. Are they the best objects? Absolutely not. This is the basics of learning how to create 3-dimensional shapes from 2-dimensional shapes. As you can see here, I went ahead and gave you more examples of doing the same process over again for all of the other shapes. And as far as just talking real briefly about circles, circles tend to be the easiest thing, spheres if you will, when we're turning them into a 3D shape. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about circles and turning them into spheres, so that way you can actually get the idea of how to make essentially balls. And as you can see also, and another way that you could do this is taking the same size shape you have drawn and simply drop it down, up, left, right from your other original shape and just continue to draw line work from there. So before we get to the super secret, awesome, advanced shape perspective that I promised you that I would do, I wanted to dive in a little bit more with the circle, because the circle definitely does not act the same way as the rest of the shapes. Really, truly, your circle to turn it into a sphere is directly involved with via a light source. So let us try and make a sphere together, because having spheres and understanding light theory for spheres, you'll be able to translate most of this to any and all other three-dimensional objects and shapes that you will ever run into. First things first, go to your figure icon, select the ellipse. Then, of course, as far as this whole lesson has been concerned, obviously, keep the same settings. Hold the shift key, click and drag the circle. I'm going to make a fairly big one. I've gotten a fresh canvas, of course, to do this, so you also can get a fresh canvas if you so wish, or do it on the same canvas that you've been doing all the rest of the lesson on. From here, however, we have our line art. So we have layer 1, or again, whatever layer that you drew the circle on. Click your paper layer, or again, a layer that is underneath whatever layer you drew the circle on. Add a new layer, so layer 2 will be underneath layer 1. And here essentially is where the magic is going to happen. So first thing I want you all to do, go to your fill bucket on the left hand side here and pick on your color wheel a very, very light color. We could do white. We are going to use 100% grayscale, by the way, so no colors, but either you can do a pure white or just a slightly gray white color and fill in the circle. Okay, we're going to fill it in just like that. Now remember how to lock a layer. Go to the little grid icon up here, little checkerboard with a padlock on it, and boop, lock the layer that you just colored inside of your circle. Now, this is where the fun begins. So take your airbrush tool. Make sure you are on the soft airbrush setting. Let's see here. Oh, I need a much bigger brush. So let's get a very nice, large brush size. Something fairly big, because this is going to be our initial shade. So first and foremost, though, make sure we choose a light direction. So I'm going to choose this as the direction of my light, which means that the lightest part of the circle is here and the darkest is back here. Okay, I think that's fairly simple to understand. So let's apply it. I'm going to keep that red arrow there just as a guide. You can use red arrows or whatever you want, as far as now you know exactly the direction your light is coming from. So go back to layer 2, get that airbrush, soft, and then I'm going to make sure that I am on that base color that we're at, because we're going to add a much darker shade. So go down to about halfway on the color wheel on the gray side. Let me go ahead and move myself out of the way here, help out a little bit. So we started with this color here where we barely moved it down from white. Now we're moving the circle to about halfway, right about there. Can be anywhere around there. So now we're going to take that airbrush and we're going to, in a circular half circle motion, like kind of like how we would color. Think about how we would color a sphere. So a little bit of an arc. There we go. Perfect. Look at that. Look at that. We already have a ball. We did nothing. We just did a little swoop-de swoop, just like this. And again, we're trying to obey the light theory here, that the light's coming right here. This is the brightest. This is going to be the brightest side of this sphere. Now we're going to reduce the brush size just by a little bit. There we go. And we're going to get a little darker, a little bit darker. Something right about there. I guess it'd be 79 at the bottom. And then we're going to continue the same thing. Nice and light though, nice and light. We're just going to darken this up just a little bit. Starting to get around those sides. We're more deepening around the sides of the circle just like this. Isn't that something? Isn't that cool? Looks like a little marble. little BB or something like that. A ball bearing. But we are far from done. We are far from done. Come up a little bit on that side, just like this. Use your feelings. Use your feelings. There you go. All right. Let's go a little bit smaller. Little bit smaller brush. Let's go to like 115. That's fine. 97, 100, doesn't matter. And we'll go near pitch black, but not quite. Nothing in this world is pure black. So unless I guess you make it so. But for this application, no. And then of course, we're just going to go around the side. We're really getting detail. We're really following around this circle here. Just let the strokes happen. We don't want it too dark. We're just going to go nice and light all the way up and around just like that. As you see, my tool just kind of raising the sides, kind of get up there a little bit, not too much though. There we go. Maybe go a little inside a little bit, but just nice and light. You don't have to press hard. Do not press hard. Just let your pen glide along inside there. There we go. Perfect. Now this is gonna be fun. Go all the way to pure white. Pure white. Go to 255 all the way to the top left corner. First thing is I'm gonna follow this arrow and I'll be like, okay, so right here is the brightest point. We're just gonna go ahead and put a nice little shine mark right there, making circles. We're making circles. The whole thing is a circle. This whole sphere is a circle. Circle, circle, circle. That's fine. All right, excellent. So that is the shine spot there, but we're not done yet. Now we're going to do something that is a little bit more advanced. Just a tiny, itty bitty bit more advanced. And it's going to be called a reflective or bounce light. And for most parts, shadows aren't always complete shadows. Typically, light still interacts with a shadow in some way, shape, or form, to why there is never complete darkness for the most part. So what is a bounce light? Well, essentially a bounce light is this, where we have that pure white, right? And we're going to make it a little bit smaller, probably a 58 or 60. 60 would be just fine. And what we're going to do is just create what we would say like a faint glow around this edge. Nice and light. There's not going to be a lot of it. Just follow your circle all the way around. There you go. Biggest takeaway here is essentially, even in the darkest sides of an object, you'll still have some sort of reflection from a surface or something. And if there was something up here, there'd be a reflection from that. If there was something over here, there might be a reflection from that. So on and so forth. And that's getting into a lot of more detailed and advanced light theory, but that's not what we're doing today. We're just trying to create from a two-dimensional shape into a 3D one. And spheres are just a little extra special because instead of using line art in order to draw from one corner to the next corner to create the idea of a 3D object, we have to actually use a form of color, or in this case, grayscale, to show that this is a 3D object. And so hopefully that helped you out a ton with especially making spheres. All right. I mean, I hope you had some fun. I know this was a lot to unpack, and it may seem like making 3D objects is a little daunting, but I'm trying to teach you one of the more proper ways to do it. Sure, we could just draw a square and then another square behind it and do those things, and freehanding 3D objects is just fine, so long as you are applying some sense of law of perspective. Your 3D objects will start coming to life from a 2D object or 2D shape. If you feel that I did not go over enough information, or maybe you got confused along the way, whatever it is, I'd be more than happy to create a follow-up video, get more in depth with the community, and so on. So please let me know in the comments below if I missed the mark in any way, shape, or form. You wanted to know the super secret advanced shape lesson perspective extreme. So let me show you the 2 secret shapes that will make you a master of 3 dimensions. The 2 shapes that I speak of are cylinders and cones. Cylinders and cones have properties that they share both with their spherical counterparts and with shapes that have angles and corners to them. So let's dive in. First, we're going to do a cone. So first thing I want you to do is go to your figure icon on the left, grab the straight line. Settings should be all the same. Now, unlike triangles, you technically can't really use a 45-degree angle to make a cone. You can, but I think we're going to do the traditional spike is what we're going to be going after. So pick anywhere on your canvas. You can start a new canvas, of course, if you wish to follow along, or continue to draw on the canvas that we've been drawing on this entire time right from the beginning, because maybe you just want a really cool doodle sheet. So we're going to click anywhere and drag our line. Right about there looks good. Okay. Now, the thing about cones, though, they need to be equal on each side. Now, with advanced artistry and stuff like that, with spikes, we can go in curves and all sorts of things, but we're just focusing on the basic cone shape. So how do we get the same side equal to each other? Let me show you. Grab your selection tool up here. You should have the lasso selected. Go ahead and make sure you selected the lasso. Draw around your line. Edit. Copy. Edit, paste. Okay. Now, you will have a layer 1 copy that you'll automatically be using, which is the new line that you made. Go to the scale and rotate selector. Then, on this left-hand side, you will see these icons here. This is the flip horizontal at center of rotation and flip vertical at center of rotation. We want to pick this first one, which is flip horizontal. The reason being is that essentially you're creating a mirror image. So click on it. Now we have a perfect X, but we actually need to just move that line over. So do not drag this manually. Use your arrow keys on your keyboard and just click the right arrow key until you meet up with the top, just like this. You have actually created the point of your cone. Now hit OK and hit deselect. Perfect. Now let's go ahead and merge these layers together. Move myself right over here. So click layer 1, select the layer 1 copy, right click either one of them, merge selected layers. So now we have both lines on one layer as we click the eyeball on and off. Now staying on the same layer, I'm going to zoom in a little bit here because it's just going to be a lot easier to work with. Now we need to take a new line tool. So go to figure, and then now we're going to click curve. Make sure the curve brush size is 5. Leave everything else alone. Just make sure the brush size is size 5. That's all you got to do. So you'll see just at the top of my little head over here, I'm circling the 5. Now, I'm going to get really in here, really in here, and you should too. Click the very end of either one of these lines. Drag the line over to the other side, making a triangle. Release. Now you see this. We got bouncy, 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 bouncy. All right. Obviously, with a cone, we're sitting on top of something. So we're going to actually just create a small curve. We don't have to do anything crazy. So just find that curve that kind of makes sense and click it just like this. And essentially now you have a cone. The interesting thing about cones, act more like a cylinder. Once you add a curved line to a triangle, you no longer have a flat surface. You have now created, in actuality, a round surface. So the same principles of creating a sphere applies with cones. Let's go ahead and do that now. Remember how to do it? click on the paper or the layer below layer 1 or the layer that you drew your cone on. Add another layer, so that way layer 2 is underneath layer 1. Take a very light color, either pure white or next to pure white. Fill in the cone. Lock that layer we just colored on. Grab your airbrush. Make sure it is soft. Get a fairly decent size brush size. I think 266 will do just fine. Now we're going to go halfway down and get our initial shade. Now, of course, pick a light source. I'm going to let you have all the freedom in the world. You can pick whatever light source you want. I'm going to pick this side for my light source. And actually, I'm going to go more horizontal than vertical. There we go. That's what I'm going to pick there. So, coloring in red. We can color in red. That's fine, but I don't want to. Let's just go back to the middle there. And we're just going to, again, treat this like a sphere. Treat it like a sphere. There we go. Go a little darker. Smaller brush size, not by a whole lot, but a little smaller brush size, maybe 130. 130 is fine. Now we're just going to shade this back end just like this. Just like this. There we go. Fantastic. Doesn't have to be perfect, it just has to be a representation. Now we're going to go near black. Remember, we're not going to go completely black. Just near it. Close enough, and reduce that brush size again. Try to get probably, 60 will be just fine. We'll go to the size 60 brush on that. And then we're going to go down on the straight edge there. And then we're going to circle a little bit because this is where that cone curves. See how we're curving that a little bit there? There we go. There's a little advancement. You're going to follow the straight line until you get to the perception of your cone curving. There we go. Something just like this. There we go. Fantastic. Let's go a little bit big on the brush and just kind of make that, come on, just a tiny bit more. Just a tiny bit more. There we go. Now, remember, go to pure white. Remember that spot that I said that's the shiniest spot on the cone? Well, there we go. That's going to be the shiniest spot there. But we're going to do something a little cooler, a little bit more extra. Because this is a cone, and we can do this with the circle as well, but we're going to actually go to a really small brush size, like a 10. Now, a little higher than that. Let's do 20. That was 20. Yes, 20. And we're going to take this pure white and go lightly on the edge of the side of light. And then also lightly go around the edge of the cone on the back side. Remember that reflective light? We gotta have that reflective light back there. So we're just gonna go on that edge just like this, nice and lightly. We don't have to press too hard, just nice and light, and then go on the bottom as well. So start from that corner and just work your way around nice and light. Do not have to do a whole lot of work here. Just nice and light. And essentially, that is your cone. Now, this is more of a, this cone is sitting on top of something. The curve is a little aggressive for this cone, but I really wanted to just show that example that when we start adding curvature to essentially what this would be a spike, that we obey the law of a sphere, which is we simply have to use shading or value to denote that, oh, this is a cone, and that we're not looking at the face of a shape. So when we go to our earlier representations of a triangle, see how the face of this triangle is lit up and then the rest of the faces are dark, we clearly can tell that this is like a building block or something like that, or wood block that's in the shape of a triangle. And we can clearly see here that that is not what's happening here. This is something that has roundness to it. And so when we make cones, this is essentially what you need to do for a cone. Now, probably one of the most important shapes that you will ever learn is a cylinder, which again takes the properties of a sphere, but you're essentially taking that circle and dragging it out and creating a cylinder. So let's go ahead and make a cylinder. So I'm starting with a fresh layer, deleted the other layers that we worked on. Going back to my figure tool, grabbing the ellipse. Settings should just be the same. Shift. So hold the shift key, click and drag the circle. There we go. Then we're going to do the same thing again, but we're going to stay pretty far away from this other circle. Let's do shift and drag right about there. I think that's pretty good. So now we have two circles on the plane of existence in our perspective lines. We're imagining the perspective. We're just obeying the law of perspective because we do have a vanishing point. It does exist in some way, shape, or form because these circles are the same size, but one is going away from the other. So now, how do we draw a cylinder though? There's no corners anywhere. Well, to make a cylinder make sense, we essentially do have to draw some sort of side. And we can't just simply go dead center to dead center for a lot of the time. Now, in this particular circumstance, we can draw a line dead center to dead center, but as you see here, it doesn't seem quite right because we got the line that dips underneath the actual sphere. We don't want that. The true top curve of your sphere has to be able to be free. And what I mean by that is that we shouldn't be erasing the circle in any way, shape, or form that's outside the line. Let me draw an example. That was actually pretty good. So that's about what it would need to be looking like. But let's just say I went from here to here, right? And we have all of that circle that's above the line. Well, if we erased that, I mean, as you can see, that doesn't look right. We don't want to erase any of that circle. So we have to be sure that when we draw our lines, that we are over top of the circle as best as possible. And it might take a little bit for you to get it right. You have to use your perception of things. I'm not even a master at this myself, so this takes a little while to get used to. But essentially, as you see here, my line, as I'm bouncing it up and down, is molding and aligning with itself within the circle. So essentially, it's becoming one line. There we go. And as you see here, we might have a few little nubs. That's fine. We can erase those down. So long as we are erasing the line and not the circle, it is okay. Now, the same principle with the bottom. If we use the direct center to center, well, we have a few problems. One, we have to erase that line there for the circle. That's not correct. And the line does not want to continue with the curvature of the circle. And so this would be an incorrect line to use. Sometimes, it depends on what might be more helpful for you to learn this, is to either start at the circle in the back and work your way to the front, like so, or work your way from the front circle to the back. And again, this wouldn't be quite right because the circle is not, we're not following the circle, we're outside of the circle. Again, to make a perfect cylinder, we do have to put some effort into this. I am willing to go ahead and erase that line. It is the line that is the problem. The rest of it is okay. And you should have something like this. Now, of course, as far as anything else is concerned, this circle is got to be erased up into those lines. So we're going to have to get pretty detailed. Zoom on in and butt up against that line you made, just like so. Same concept down here. Butt up against the line that you made, like so. And that essentially is a cylinder. How do we color a cylinder? Again, the principle of light has to be adhered to. So we're going to create another layer underneath that first layer of line art. So layer number 2 is underneath layer number 1. I am going to create a light source. Let's go ahead and do a angle like this. These are some of the most popular angles, by the way, to show off light. So we're going to do that. Same principle. We're going to either pick a pure white or just slightly off white and color in our cylinder. And then from there, we're going to lock it. Remember to lock that layer. We're going to now do something a little special. The reason why I say a little special is because now that we actually have a face, right? The cylinder has a face. It has roundness to it, which is its side right here, but it has a flat face to it. So we actually have to do both. We have to not only adhere to a sphere for the side, but we have to adhere to a simple shaped face as well. That's why cylinders are a lot more complex than what they may seem. So how do we combat not shadowing what we don't want to shadow? You see this little wand icon here? It says auto select. Go ahead and click that wand. We can do refer to editing layer or refer to all layers. I'll just do refer to all layers. Click inside of the face of the cylinder and you'll see like a dotted lines outlining the whole thing. And so what basically you're doing is you're sectioning off this rolling side of the cylinder. What that allows us to do is to keep it selected. You'll still have your selection tool up just like this. You'll see the box down here, right? I'm just kind of moving it out of the way. We're going to grab our airbrush so we can select other tools while we're still selected. Pretty cool stuff. Get the airbrush, make sure we're on soft, get a fairly decent size for shading, go midway down on the color scale, 50-50 gray, and then essentially knowing where my light source is coming from, start shading. There you go. And then a little bit on the top though, because as far as the cylinder is concerned, it is rolling over. So you're going to have a little bit of shadow, just a little bit of shadow on the top there. So far, so good, right? That's the cylinder face. We're going to do a little bit more though. So decrease that brush size. I'm going to go to about like a 85. That seems fine. Go near black. Don't go total black. And get underneath this just like that. And then maybe a tiny bit. Just let your airbrush barely touch over on top of this cylinder here. It almost looks metallic. Pretty cool stuff. All right, there we go. And then of course, don't forget the pure white. Decrease that brush size a little bit. Right about, well, we're gonna do a fairly large brush. Let's do like a, I don't know, let's do 97, 115 seems fine. And we're just gonna make a streak right across right where that light is shining most. Decrease the size by a significant amount, probably size 30. And then, as we've all been doing, just add a little bit of that bounce shadow right underneath the cylinder. And the same on the top over here, just a little bit of that bounce shadow or bounce light on the top of the cylinder. There we go. So now we're going to deselect. So hit that deselect button on the selection tool. That's how easy it is. Super easy. Now we got to do the face of the cylinder, the actual flat face of the cylinder, and adhere to the same principle. So let's go ahead and get that magic wand, the auto select. select the face of the circle. So now all the circle on the inside is selected. I'm going to drag this selection bar just off to the side so I don't accidentally click it. Grab our soft airbrush. Oh, it's the same story, same shit, different day. And make that brush a little large. That'll work. 50-50 shade, 50-50 gray, just as best as possible. And of course, well, we're going to kind of shade it like a sphere. We're going to shade it kind of like a sphere. There we go. And we're going to leave a fairly light side over there, and then a fairly dark side on this side here. Again, just go as light as possible. You don't want to go too dark, too light. There we go. And just use your eyes, use your eyes, use your eyes. Perfect. Then go a little smaller on the brush size. Go to near black, near black. And just follow along the edge. Funny thing is, we're essentially making a sphere, but because of how things work on a rounded surface, this works out pretty good. And then pure white, smaller brush size, except for we're gonna, we'll just do smaller brush size, it's fine. Sometimes, and this is all artistic liberty. You can get a bigger brush size and make a shine spot on this end if you want, but technically this face is not really facing the light source, so there's no need to really add any major brightening or shine spots or anything like that. We're just gonna go around this edge with the pure white, because again, there is going to be reflection, ambient light. There's a lot of words for bounce light. It's all in the same vein. Essentially, again, what we're doing is just adding that extra bit of dimension. And there you go. That's all there is to it. Hit the deselect button, and you have officially made a cylinder. It's like almost like we're taking that sphere and we're just pulling it, and the shading that we do is staying with the sphere as into a cylindrical shape. And so with all that being said, hopefully this has helped you. This lesson has shown that we can make all sorts of shapes, keeping with the rule and law of perspective, and then applying basic light theory to those now made 3 dimensions, and applying light theory, basic light theory, to these 3-dimensional objects to give them more depth, perception, etc., to really bring those 3D objects to life. There are, of course, more advanced lessons to be had here, and again, please let me know in the comments below if there's anything else that I missed that you would like to go over in detail, or would like to learn more advanced shape methods. I'd like to hear from you. But this is your host, Zipsaw, with Zipsaw's Art, and you have yourself a good, wonderful rest of your day. Toodles.